will take.
Okay.
And I'm going to have to mute some stuff, I'm assuming.
Right, I'll tell you when we're actually going live.
Okay, I'm assuming we're actually live now.
Take. I've got like 4 browsers up open here.
Okay, shut up.
Right, I'm actually going to hit the live thing now, but I don't know how long it will take. And I'm going to have to...
Right, something's repeating me.
Right, I'll tell you when we're actually going live.
Okay, that's it. Right, so we are on my first live stream, I guess. Bit nervous myself anyway. You've obviously had loads of interviews, so I'm assuming you're probably less nervous than me. So, do you want to introduce yourself to the people on the channel, and then we'll get on with the interview?
Okay, my name is Felton. I do a bit of ultra running. My background is military. I served in the army for 24 years across the world, across the globe, obviously in hot and cold countries. But I've always had a love for running. It's always been my freedom. It's been my space, as I call it. And it's really important to me to see people achieve their goals, irrespective of what their goals may be or may not be, to be honest. So it's a passion of mine to see people believe in themselves, really. And that's sort of really my sort of brief outlook on running and my background.
Yes. Right. So do you want to tell us about what you was like as before you started running? Or have you always been running?
I started running at the age of 6. Basically, it found me. So I've always, it was at school, I was never really academic, but running was sort of my escape. Where other people were very good in the classroom, I wasn't particularly great in the classroom. But running was my focus, that was my obsession. And it was everything to me, really. And it was sort of a way for me to express myself, like people can express themselves in their language, whatever they do, languages, history, maths, or whatever. Running was my way of expressing myself and my personality. So it's always been through my life. In my army career, I ran for the army team. We won the army championships many times. I coached the ladies athletics team for a couple of years. I went to the British Olympics or the Sydney Olympics in 2000, the British Olympic team, which was fantastic in itself. And that was a learning curve to see how professionals train, how they're coached as well. They're all coached differently because everyone is different. So you can't just sort of coach generic. It's sort of specific for the person. So that's really sort of how I've come into running. I did have a sabbatical from running forced upon me due to injury. I've only been back 2 years running since my sabbatical of, I believe it was around 8 years. I got badly injured, and then I got running again during COVID because, like most of us, we went out walking or jogging because we could do nothing else. And then I lost 4.5 stone, and it was a journey. It was a journey that I'll never forget because it was important to me, actually, as a person. It was important lessons, to be fair. And then I've obviously gone back into the ultra world, and I like the ultra world. It's different from club running and all the 10Ks and 5Ks, not just because of the distances. The personalities are different. In ultra running, you know, if you're racing, you don't, let's just say, I would never look at a female and go, oh, I'm going to beat her, because females they're strong in ultra running. You just got to look at the professionals. Courtney Daughter comes in the top. It's an amazing thing, you know. So can you hear me again, Andy?
Yeah. You've come straight to
So basically, you know, that's what I like about the ultra world, because everyone's on an equal playing field. We all help each other. So if I was winning a race or there was 2 of us together neck and neck, I've always said this, and that person was dehydrated and I had water or some fluid, I would offer that without any hesitation. It's not about me against him or me against her. It's against the elements, the conditions, the route, the distance. It's less so for me getting first, second. That's all nice, but that's what it is. It's actually completing it, and you should never ever not offer in ultra world, irrespective of what standard people are or not.
Yeah, there is a lot more of a community, like even from marathon to ultra, there is like, so it's so much different, like people speak to each other. It's a lot less competitive as such, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The competition is completing it in the time that's allowed. That's the competition. Or the competition is you against a time that you want to achieve. If you set yourself a time, like most people, a lot of people, like they would say, oh, the 100-miler, it's to do it in 24 hours would be the dream, or 30 hours, or whatever it may be. That's them putting their, so it's that's their competitive, that's the competitive side. So it's not against each other. I know people say, well, people race against each other to win, and it's nice to win. It is nice to win, but it's not the be all and end all. Most ultra runners, if not all, DNF at some stage. So that happens. It's a part of ultra running. It's how you learn. We've all been there. I've DNF'd. It's when you learn. And I think in some respects, I think it's important to DNF in some respects. And I don't necessarily even say a DNF's a bad thing, because some people might not have done 100 miles, so they might go and do, say, 80 miles and then DNF. Well, actually, they've run further than they've ever done, so that's an achievement. Of course, it's an achievement. They may have run for the night for the first time. That's an achievement. So there's a lot of things to be sort of taken away from there. And I don't really like the phrase, oh, they didn't finish. And, there's always a positive somewhere, and use that positive for the next one. I mean, that's my view on sort of the 100-mile races and the 50-milers, because they are completely different. 50-milers to 100 is a massive step up.
Yeah, like I've tried to. And what was your first race back? Like your first ultra back after your injury?
My first race back was the Wuthering Heights, and it was a 50k up in the North Yorkshire Moors, 4,000 feet of elevation, quite technical in places. It is technical in places. It's just because I wanted to do that before the Chester 100, really see where I was, because I didn't know where I was in fitness sense. I managed to win it, and I got a course record, which I didn't even know. I didn't realise, to be honest, and that's genuine, as I was eating my cake at the finish. And they're fantastic Wim Up North races, so friendly. They really are friendly. A real good community there. I might, for winning, I don't really want one, to be honest. You get the same medal, I think it's important as well, because we won the same course, and that's sort of important. And it was just a fantastic event, really. I'd love to do it again. I definitely will do that race again. Well, certainly we'll do one of their events again, because the atmosphere is fantastic. They tend to do loops as well. So on the same day, people do half marathons, 20-milers. So you sort of pass in different distances, and that's pretty cool, because obviously everyone's helping each other again. It's just a different mentality. And then the next one was the Chester 100. I wanted to do 24 hours. That's all I wanted. I didn't want anything else. But then I found myself in the lead, and it was like, well, just keep going. And it wasn't keep going for a particular time, or keep going apart from doing 24 hours or even trying to win it. It was just like, I just want to get it finished now. And that's all it was. It was, that was genuine. So they were my first two races back into the sport, and both good experiences for different reasons. Both fantastic.
Yeah, because Chester 100 was the first time I met you. Not the one just gone, the one before, and you just came out some bushes, and I was on the way out, and you was on the way back in, and I was like, how fast is this guy? I was like, shocked.
What I liked about that, I loved that part of the route, actually. I mean, I love the route anyway. I think Chester 100 is a really nice route, and I'd recce that part, so I knew you swapped over. And when I came back onto the canal, the first person I saw was Karen, who won the ladies, which was really cool, actually, really, really cool. And I was passing, obviously, there's guys coming everywhere, and the encouragement I got from everybody, every single person, was brilliant, actually. And you know, then you get sort of information fed to me, because I didn't know really where. I know I was winning, but because we had a staggered start, I didn't know what everyone else was doing. So it's sort of like, well, just run at my pace. And then I was just getting told like all the time, well, you're doing this, you're doing that, and it's good, and all this. And actually, all was going through my head, and you know this section, before you get back to Fosham, you got the horrible wood section bit where there's some trees down. So all I was thinking, and it's genuine, was I want to get through that in daylight. I don't want this at night. And that's all it was. It wasn't anything else, but you know what? I just want to get through those woods in daylight because it's so much easier. And that was all it was, really. And I managed it. I did manage to go to that. But it is a nice route. I think the GB Ultras 100 miler Chester is, I would 100% recommend it. I think it's a fantastic route. It's got everything. It's got a nice start to it. The hard bit really for me is around the 70-mile mark. That Spike Island, or just before Spike Island, between Spike Island and Sandy Lane? That between that checkpoint and the one on the right, that's the difficult bit. Even though it's flat, it's difficult because it's just one long drag, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's quite, is it like 12 miles between them checkpoints?
Yeah, it is. And you know, you're coming into night. Most people will be coming into the night, or they're in the night, and they know they've got the canal on the other side of the bridge, and it's just like, oh, can I be bothered to do that? And it is mentally, I would say that's the hardest bit. You know, and I found it hard when I did it the year before. That was my hard bit. I mean, I got to Spike Island, I felt fantastic, and then about a mile after Spike Island, oh, I found that from there back to where you guys were on the path, that was my hard bit. That was really mentally tough, but I had to just go, you know what, I've done all the training, I'm doing it, and that's it, and I'm just going to keep going. And actually, when I got back onto where we swap over, I actually got a new lease of life. I came back and I was like, actually, I feel really good now. I went through the bad patch, as they say, and went into a good patch, and it was really cool. It was really good. But it's a good race.
So, what was like your first ever marathon or ultra? What was that like? And
my first marathon
at that point.
My very first marathon, and not a lot of people, but you know, hardly anyone knows this story. Was my first. I was based out in Germany, and one of our officers said, "Look, let's go and do the Hamburg Marathon." And it was a blistering hot day, and I did 4 hours and I can't even remember what the time was, but it was over 4 hours anyway. We did have a few drinks the night before, admittedly, but I was fit in those days, but I wasn't that fit. And a guy beat me. He overtook me within the last 200 meters wearing a motorcycle crash helmet. And I'll never forget this to this day. It was like, am I hallucinating? The guy's got a crash helmet on. And he beat me. He beat me fair and square, you know. That was my first marathon. And I didn't enjoy it at all. And I was like, I ain't doing this ever again. And then the Army Championships used to be in Berlin. And it was like, oh, I can get to Berlin. So we did the Berlin Marathon, and I think I did 3 hours and 10, 3 hours and 9, I think I did. And I thought, oh, I quite like this now. And then I did the London a couple of times. I've done Washington, because the Washington's a big military competition. And I think I did 240 on that. I could be wrong. But then I sort of done about, I don't know how many marathons I've done, to be honest, over the years. My favourite marathon, it would have to be either Calgary or Snowdon. Snowdon Road one. The Snowdon one is really cool. It's a really good race. Great atmosphere, because you start at Llanberis and you go up to Penny Pass. You know, you're going uphill for 4.5 to 5 miles. Very challenging, really good route, very well organised, brilliant atmosphere. Brilliant atmosphere. Everyone waits for everyone at the finish. Irrespective, they do 2 hours 40, 6 hours. It doesn't matter. Everyone sort of line the route at the finish. You know, it's a really good carnival at Snowdon. Calgary slightly different because they do it over the Stampede weekend, and it's very hot and it's up at altitude. But again, you finish, the first thing they give you is a beer, or they offer you a beer, and you're like, really? I'm just, it's like 9:30 in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, really good atmosphere. So they'll be my two favourites. But I'd be lucky and blessed to do marathons all around the world. There's some I would never do again. Singapore, I would never do again in a month of Sundays. Horrendous, really. Just the humidity and the heat. But yeah, marathons. I've done so many that I don't know. I couldn't tell you how many. I couldn't even tell you how many half marathons I've done. That many. I couldn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, marathon running is good. It's good fun. But it's quite commercialized now, especially the big ones, big city ones.
Yeah.
But Snowdon's like, you just, there's no sort of the fast ones to the front or that. You just stand where you're going to stand, start, that's it, go, happy days, and you run, and it's fantastic routes. It's a really good route actually. And as I said, very good atmosphere.
So I just want to put out here, if anyone wants to ask a question, put it in the comments and we will get to them at the end, just because I've not said that yet. But sorry, I've got some notes. So tell us about your big challenge you've just done and all about that, because that's absolutely amazing. I couldn't even imagine doing half that distance.
I mean, the Southern Way, obviously, it's in theory it's 214 miles, but there's a few diversions now, so it is a little bit further than 214, and that's if you go the right way. And because it's wayward marked and all that, but yes, it is. But at night you can't see the posts, and the paths are very narrow. If you go 5 meters either side, you end up in a bog in certain places. So you've got to know the route in detail. It's completely different from like the guys that have done the Scotland 100 recently. And I was crewing, got guys there. They found it's completely different. It's completely different terrain. It's wet 1 minute on your feet, and then dry, then you're on tarmac, then you're on hard stones. So your feet take a hammering. So the idea came from Siobhan. She basically just said, it was literally, I got injured last year on the race across Scotland badly, and we were just talking over coffee, and it was like, do you think anyone could do there and back? And it literally was, and I was like, let me do the numbers. So I sat there and literally did some numbers, and I was like, it's doable. It is doable, but there's certain things that you really have to change the training method completely, change the diet completely, and change my mentality of the way I run. So it was like, okay, you can't go fast at the beginning. You've got 430 miles, and that's if you go the right way. So it was just like, right, let's just go to the drawing board and then come up with a diet plan, come up with course skill, strength training, come up with the numbers between the different checkpoints and all that type of stuff. We had to sit down and work all that out. So really, me and Siobhan did that, and then people joined, and they were joining with like doing the social media and with the training. Gareth helped out on some of the training up there in Scotland because he lives there, but the training really was done by myself mainly, and Siobhan. So I did like Offers Dyke, Sea to Summit ultramarathon with her. I did Helvellyn. I did the Yorkshire White Rose, which is tough, but I did that on my own. And I did the Glasgow to Edinburgh, GB Yorkshire's Glasgow to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And I did that with Siobhan because I had to learn to run slower than what I would normally do, eat more, and then run and walk, and hiking. And then my hiking wasn't great, if we're being frank. So we went and did some hiking up in the lakes, and Siobhan was, well, she is, she's a faster hiker than me, and that's just a fact, that's just the truth. So I had to sort of put all that together with everything and then come up with my own strategy of how I was going to do it. And my strategy was clear from my head. I said to the guys, look, I'm going to do just over 3 days on the way out. That'll give me 4 days to come back. Not a problem. And it was literally that basic. And I knew that if I did the first 100 in a certain time, that would give me X amount of hours. And it was all about protecting my feet on the first bit. And I had no feet problems at all for the majority of that. Not really. I had a couple of blisters, but that's nothing. That's to be expected. But that was literally it on my feet. My ankles and all that was swelled up. So yeah, I mean, you know, but they swell up anyway. Over 200 miles, your ankles will swell up. You know, I couldn't really see the bones in my ankles and then my feet. But I was all right with that. I expected that. And actually, I turned that negative into a positive anyway in my head, because in my head, I had it down to being 180 to 200 miles that they would go. Well, one of them went, I think, 230, another one went about 250. So in my head, I was like, well, I got another 30 miles out my left. I got another 50 out my right. So that's good. This is a good thing. So I turned a negative into a positive. And I think that's important in ultramarathon running, is when something goes wrong, because it will always go, something will happen that you have to think about and you have to get over it. Try and think how you can flip it as a positive. So your brain goes, oh, actually, I'm having a low point now, but I will get a high point. So I'm looking forward to getting that high point. And because we all have lows, no matter how, you know, fast someone is or not, it's irrelevant. Everybody will have a low, 100%. It's how you cope with that low. Do you say, well, you know what, I'm having my low, but I know my high, I'm going to get a high soon. And that's how I do it. I flip it and go, I believe, and it does. It might take an hour, it might take 10 minutes, it might take 2 hours, but the high will come back. But yeah, there's some other way, for those that don't know it. It's called Uplands for a reason. It's the Scottish borders, starts at Portpatrick, finishes at Coxburns Path. And the Race Across Scotland does that exact same route. And they do slightly different in the sense of they go off the trail sometimes for the checkpoints, but it is the same route. You have every type of terrain. You have road, you have cliff tops, you have seriously big hills. You've got marshy bogland, you've got farm tracks, you've got logging roads, you've got everything. And it's a beautiful trail. It really is a beautiful trail. And it's knowing when you can run and when you can't, or not to run. Not that you can't, just say, well, actually, I'm not going to run this bit because I want to save me energy because I can run in a minute. And it's sort of knowing that. And I think people learned that on the Scotland 100 this year, where they'd done a bit too much at the beginning when they should have just sort of like bring it down a little bit and save that energy for later on when they can run. And I think that's the key. But when I set off with Norman, a great lad. He's done the Race Across Scotland twice. He's going for he's going for a hat trick this year, which in itself was a fantastic feat. And he ran with me for 43 miles, and then we sort of, you know, we all had a schedule, so I just chilled out, changed socks, had something to eat, and all that good stuff. And then the first night was the hardest. Yeah, it was the hardest. It went down to -8. It was a complete whiteout in the snow. You know, where I was, there was nothing. It's me, the animals, the wind, the snow. That is it. For at least, I would say, what, 6 hours, 5-6 hours.
Yeah.
And I quite enjoyed that. I actually really did enjoy that. And then you sort of go into towns, and you start going back into towns. You go into, you know, Sanker and One Lockhead, all small little villages, and really, and that's cool in its way. But then you're into the hills again, and then I got to, I think I did 25 hours for the first 100.
Yeah.
And then I had walked the last 3 hours on purpose, just because I knew what was coming up the next day. And my head had already flipped into, right, I want to have 3 hours, I want to get a couple of hours sleep, get some food down me, change my clothing. And I was waiting for someone. So that I did about half an hour on, which is fine. And then we the next section is quite hilly. Those that know it, that know what I'm on about. From One Lockhead over to realistically St Mary's, you've got a series of hills, and there's no way getting away from that. But I like that section. It's very remote, very remote places. Sadly, the loggers have been logging over the last year. A heck of a lot of trees gone down, especially I noticed. But then I had Martin, and Martin came round with me through the night, or halfway through the night. Martin ran with me for the next morning, which was really good. And then Nikki came and she ran with me a section. So then I started having people joining me. And one of the things that sort of I found slightly frustrating, and I understand why, so I'm not criticising anyone, I wouldn't do that, but I get why people would say this, was when I was getting people to run with me, people say, oh, I won't be able to keep up with you. I'm like, I was done 200 miles then, I was done 300 miles, I'll be doing 20-minute miling. You know, I'll be doing 18-minute miling in that section. That section, the quickest I'm going to do is 15 miling, you know, and that. So, but I understand why people would say that, and I get that. But, you know, Martin and you know, Nicola and Tim, you know, well, Tim's a good ultramarathon. They're all good ultramarathons in their own right, but they've got various things. You know, you don't need someone that's really quick. You need the right personality beside you, and that's the most important thing. And they were all the right, but they were all had the right ingredients, because we had quite a few days of rain, quite a lot of low hard miles. I mean, especially I think it was the 5th day. It just rained day 4 and 5, and the 6th night it just rained 2.5 days, and it was bleak. But I never had a thought for 1 minute that I couldn't do it. I wasn't going to do it. There was never, I'm not doing this. It just wasn't, because I remembered why I was doing it, and it wasn't because no one's not done it. Although that was nice. It was, I wanted to raise money for autism because that was important to me with my kids and myself.
So are you like, I'm autistic, actually, myself, and so I'm assuming, are you autistic or is it your kids?
No, myself and my kids.
Yeah.
I found out last year. It's slightly different because I've had my life, and you know, the ironic thing is I probably wouldn't get in the army today with being autistic. And yet I had a very successful army career. I finished as a officer class 1. I did my power commander course, everything else. The Navy guys, the top Navy guys come out, he's autistic. So I think they need to change, they need to have a look at their rules, to be honest. But my son is, and my daughter. So my son particularly, he struggles. He does at times. So when I had a cut of low bits, I just think, you know what, okay, this is what I'm going through, this little agony or a little bit of a niggle is nothing compared to what he goes through on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So actually just get going and keep going. And I had the right team behind me, you know. I mean, you know, there was a couple of times where, not because I was struggling or anything, it's like Siobhan would say, right, okay, you're too quick, you know, you calm it down. You haven't eaten enough calories, get these calories in your body. And I just literally had to just do as I was told, really, in some respect.
Yeah.
And to be fair, all the right decisions were made by Gareth, by Siobhan, by all of them, Nicky, my brother, the whole team, Stephen Ross, when he was running through the night with me, absolutely spot on. Tim Hyatt, I mean, the list goes on, really. You know, and then I had Ian, who has come 3rd and 2nd in the race called Scotland. He joined us at the last 3 days. Obviously, he just won in the backyard. He's won 180 West Island Way. He's a phenomenal athlete, and mentally, he's just the perfect person. He's so balanced. He doesn't get flustered. He doesn't get irate. He's just so balanced. So he was just the perfect person at the end. Yeah, just I can't speak highly enough of him. So yeah, so the team really had the right mix. It's like a cake, isn't it? You know, if you have the right mixture, it works. If you don't, you can have as much goodies in there, but it won't work. So your team is so important to get right. And I was just lucky. I was just lucky and blessed with every single one of them. Every single one of them brought something to the table. My training partners that I train with every day, like I just come back from a training session now tonight, you know, without them pushing me and me pushing them, we would never achieve it. You know, when we don't, like it's raining tonight, people go, well, I'm not going to go for a run, but I know if I don't go for a run, I get a phone call. Come on. And it's the same thing. So your training partners are absolutely vital. But yeah, so it was a really good, and I was a lucky one though, because I got the whole adventure, and that's how I look at it. I got the adventure of a lifetime, really. And they, you know, and they put so much hard work in behind me. They really did, every single one of them. The whole GB Ultra community, to be fair, supported me. The messages, and I can't thank them enough, to be fair, because they got behind me. So I can't, you know, I take my hat off to every single one of them, and that's why I've enjoyed crewing these last 2 races. Not just because it's a bit of payback, but I see it from a different angle, and I see it from a different perspective. So I've enjoyed crewing. I've really enjoyed crewing, actually. Been good fun, actually. It's been, because I learned a lot, actually. This last couple of races, I've learned a lot. And it's nice, actually. Yeah, I enjoyed it. So yeah, so really now it's just, obviously I'm going to race across Scotland. I'm not going to be looking at racing it. You know, you got to remember I'm 53 and there's guys there that are 24 and 35, whatever. And you know, I want to go and do a good 100-mile, first 100 mile. I want to really do a good solid 100 miles. And then I'm really going to sort of just take it easy because I've got a 100-mile race in October. That's important to me. And on the track, because I've never done 100 miles on the track, try and get a PB. And then I've got the tunnel next year.
That looks brutal, that.
Yeah, exactly. So
I've seen that.
It's brutal. It's Mark Cockbane's events. Every Mark does is brutal. There's no such thing as an easy one. The track is probably as easy as one.
It's the mental attitude of being in a tunnel and keep going. It's not going to change so much.
And they have this sort of crazy music on, not through him. Whoever owns a tunnel during the night, apparently, they have this weird music, but that's fine. But yeah, so I thought I'll do a race across Scotland. A, because I've pretty much recovered, and B, I love the route. That was it, really. And it was like, if I could do a good 100 on it, then I'm happy. And I don't really care where I come, to be honest. I've got a time in my head that I would like to do, and whatever that gets me, it gets me. And genuinely, I don't care if I came 100th. As long as I got that time, I'd be happy. It wouldn't bother me in the slightest, to be honest. So yeah, so the training at the moment is going exceptionally well. There's still a heck of a lot to do, but there's a heck of a lot to do. But yeah, everything's going in the right direction for next year, and I may go and do another FKT next year. There is planning going on. I need to go hike it first to have a look at it myself. So I'll be doing that over the winter months or end September, October. I'll probably walk and do a lot more hiking in those months. Because we both like hiking, so and we'll probably hike, you know. So we'll see how that gets us.
So my next question is, I've not written this one down. What is your training plan like? Because I've looked at your Strava, and it doesn't seem like you do these like ultra, unless I've just not noticed them, like these ultra massive runs in your training plan.
No. Years ago, and it happened by mistake, purely by mistake. I was in Calgary. I'd been based in Calgary. I'd done an athletic season. And then I went to just outside Calgary. I was based, and the Calgary Marathon was on, and I had 6 weeks to do marathon training. So I couldn't go and do what everyone does in marathon training, when they go out on a Sunday and they go and do 2 hours, 3 hours. I couldn't do that because my body wouldn't recover. So I thought, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do 2 half marathons, one at marathon pace, and one see where I'm at, and that will be the first one. And then I'll take my mileage down, but better mileage. And that's what I did. Basically, I took my miles down, and in my opinion, it was even though it's not my personal best, but you've got the heat, you've got the altitude, as I said, and it's quite lumpy in places. I managed to do a 2:42, I think it was, marathon, and I always say that's my best marathon, even though it's not my personal best. I would say it's my best. So I thought, you know what, actually, let's just have a look at my training here. And so since that day, I don't go and do all these mega long runs. I always put like for 100 mile, if I was to race 100 miler, I will put in between 8 and 6 weeks. I'll try and find a 50k, no more, and just to see where I'm at. That's it, and I run as I feel. But as far as my training goes, how do you train for a 200 miler?
There's just no possible way of even knowing, because you don't want to injure yourself either. So you don't want to do too much.
So what I try and do is I try and do a 100-mile week, replicate that for 2 weeks. And that's normally 2 to 3 runs a day for those 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, at the end of the first week, I'll go and do a mile effort. And it's not flat out, it's about 85%. And if I can do a particular time, then I know I'm on the right path. If I'm not, then I know I'm not. And then at the end of the second week, I always go and do a 3-miler. And I always try and do that within 20 minutes. And I can see where I'm at and how good I am or not, or what the case may be, and what I need to work on. And now, we're only about, 7 weeks away from Race Across Scotland. The reality is, this week I'll only do about 75 miles, I reckon. But in that, I've done a quality session or speed fartlek session tonight. I've done a mile effort. Was it not last night? Night before? No, last night. And then the night before, I did some strides. This morning I did some strides. So in my runs, if I go out and do a 10-miler or whatever, 5-miler, if I'm doing a hill, I'll just do that hill. I won't go up and down it like you do in hill reps. I'll just use, that's 1 rep. So on one of my routes, I've got 3 hills. I'll do 3 reps of hills, but one of them has been a mile long, and that's what I'll do. So you sort of not changing my route, but do the efforts on the route, and that's where I get the strength from. But I always get the strength from because I'm doing 2-3 runs a day as well.
Yeah. Do you do hill training or speed work, or is it just?
Yeah, it's speed work. I haven't done, and people may not believe this, I haven't done speed work properly until tonight. It was my first proper speed session since being back. That I would say is an absolute speed session. I've done little segments here and there, and little tempos here and there, but I've not done a proper constructed fartlek session until tonight. But the answer is yes, definitely. But my first year back, I just couldn't do it. And then the second year, I was having all these races. So I was trying to recover from the races before I get to the next one. So I couldn't really go and do some fartlek sessions because that takes too much out of your body. So yes, I normally I'll do 2 tempos and 1 speed session or hill session. And then all the rest of it is heart rate 130. That's it. For that week. So generally speaking, it's one heart rate between 130 140, no more than that, and then 2 tempos, which is 20 heartbeats below my maximum, no faster than that, and then 1 session where I get my heart rate up to near my maximum, and that's normally my week, and that's what I'll do for the next 6 weeks. So for the next 6 weeks, I'll do 70 miles, give or take. If it's 65, I'm not bothered. If it's 75, I'm not bothered. But in that week, I'll do 2 tempos and a quality hill session or fart like I've done tonight. And that's more than enough. And I'm going back up to the Southern Way where I get a bit more stamina for a weekend. So I do a bit more long, steady, long drawn out. So on one of the plans is I may end up doing something like 8 hours in one go, for example, which is fine. I get the stamina back up. So these next 2 weeks is, I'm more concentrating on the speed work and train the body to go a bit quicker than what it has done the last 2 years. So that's where I'm at the moment. But I am a big believer in run as you feel, as you feel, and I race as I feel as well. So when I race, I don't give myself only like I don't go, well, I want to be at that checkpoint in 2 hours. It'll always be an hour 45 to 2:30. Wherever it is in there, I don't really care, to be honest. Roughly work out. So I take the pressure away from obviously I want to be here for this time or there for that time, because you don't know what the weather's doing. You don't know if you have to go around the field because there's cows in it or whatever. You just don't know. You don't know if you're going to get lost. There's a whole host of things that can happen, as you well know. So I try and take the pressure away from the races because there's enough pressure going on anyway. So take the pressure away and just say, right, I'm going to run as I feel, and however I feel, and just do that and enjoy it. That's the key, isn't it? The key's got to be enjoying it. You've got to enjoy it and embrace it, really, and just enjoy it. But my training is normally very constructive. It is like tomorrow night I'm going out and do a 10 miler. I'm going in with my friends, and it'll be a nice steady pace, nothing fancy, nothing to write home about. But we've got one hill's about, I'll say 3/4 of a mile, really steep. We've got 2. There's 5 hills, and there's certainly 2 of the hills are over a mile long. So and I do 5 miles tomorrow morning. So tomorrow I'm doing 15 miles tomorrow. And that's all nice steady pace, all to heart rate, just nice and comfortable, just enjoying it. There's no need to do any speed. Saturday morning I'll get up and do nice warm up, and if I feel okay, I feel fine, I might put a mile effort in there, possibly, or I might do it on Sunday, and that's what I'm thinking about doing. But yeah, I sort of take away the mileage in a way. I look at like last week I wanted to do 14 hours. However I did that 14 hours was irrelevant. So, and then the week before it was 10 hours. This week it's if I can do it about 10 hours, 9 to 10 hours, I'm happy. Next week but as long as I can get 2 tempos and a quality session, I'm happy.
Right. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and then we'll go to the comments and see what questions people have got. So have you got any tips for like beginner people who want to go to ultra running? Like, what would you advise people going from marathon or just from running to do an ultra?
The biggest advice I think anyone can give anyone that's never done an ultra before: don't be scared of it. Right? It's not like a marathon where everyone wants to run the whole of the 26 miles. Firstly, a marathon, I don't care, either Courtney Dauwalter, Killian, all these great runners, they don't run the whole way. So get that whole concept out of your head that you're going to have to run 50 miles because you're not, or 30 miles. Secondly, pick the right race for you. So pick one that's not technical. So, for example, I personally would never say to someone, go to the Beacons or go to Snowdonia or Southampton Way for your first one, because they're difficult.
Yeah.
They're technically different, and the navigation side of life you've got to worry about. So, your Chesters, your M2Ls, your Glasgow to Edinburgh, definitely Glasgow to Edinburgh. And it's actually nice. It's a nice event. It's Glasgow to Edinburgh. Something of that ilk I would recommend. because you're not going to get lost. So you don't have to worry about that. The cut-offs are really cool. They're good. Don't even worry about it. And the next one is train for it. So what I mean by that is, if it's a flat route, and it's mainly on tarmac, like the G2E is, M2L is, then train on that. There's no need to go and train, over the Peak District or the lakes. There's no point. But obviously, if you do the beacons, and then obviously, of course, you've got to do that. The next one is find out what food works for you. So, and that's so important in ultramarathon running because you should be eating on the start line.
I think that's messed me up so much, because I got to a point where you sometimes get to a point where you can't eat. So because you've left it so long, you've got to try to eat, and it makes you feel quite nauseous.
I mean, the key for me is, I always say, and to be fair, you got to, I got this wrong so many times, and recently, obviously through Siobhan, and she makes it all work, is you should be eating it within every half an hour. You should be eating something or drinking something now, because obviously a lot of energy products now have calories in it.
Yeah.
So they reckon you burn 100 calories, give or take, within a mile. Therefore, obviously, if you put you've got to put calories back in your body, and you just got to find what works for you, And I don't necessarily think you got to go and spend crazy money on energy products. I mean, I had no energy products whatsoever for that 441 miles, none. We trained off it. So, a race called Scotland, I will have certain drinks with electrolytes in them, with salt, salts, but the Oxo Q. There's so many different things, but the key is eating, and you've got to be eating from the moment you start to the moment you finish. You should be eating savory stuff as well as sweet stuff. Don't just go straight to the sweet stuff, because you get sugar rush, and then that crash. And that crash can be quite hard. So you've got to sort of change your eating and train as you want to race, as you can eat. So the key is, have a rough guide, or know what they're going to give you. So, for example, GB Ultras currently, they have Tailwind.
Yeah, I highly recommend Tailwind, actually. You told me about it, actually.
Yeah, if you can train on Tailwind, you're going to get it at the race. So that makes sense to do that. Don't train on any other products, because unless you're going to make them up yourself as you go along, that's different. But for a beginner, personally, train on the same products and eat every checkpoint, even if it's just to say hello to the people that are helping out, and say, and have a chat with them. But eat is a key, and eat, and just literally eat. Just don't stop eating, but just little bits at a time. And then before the night time, if you do 100, or you go into the night, I always have a bit of coffee. Now, one of the things you can do if you're going to do 100 miler is take coffee out of your diet 2 weeks before. Take it out. Just get rid of it. Sack it off. Right. And then during the race, the night before, have a coffee. You'll be surprised the buzz you get. And then for the 100 milers, before it gets dark, I would have just normal coffee, and you'll be surprised the caffeine. You can feel it. You're like, wow, okay, this is, yeah. And then I have an Oxo Cube little drink made up, because it's got lots of salt in it, and it's a hot fluid as well. It's just little tips like that, but you got to find out what works for you. I mean, peanut butter and porridge is my go-to food. Little tubs of it, peanut butter in there, mix it in, beautiful. And it's got the calories in it, 300 calories in it. My body can take 300 calories. I'm not trying to shove 1,000 calories down. And that's what it's about, really, is finding what food works for you and stick at it. Don't mess with it, and especially not in a race. And the other tip I would say to people is, find out what socks work for you, what trainers work for you. Because I see so many people that are wearing and I don't mean to be cruel when I say this, I call them pub daps, you know, and I've seen at the ultras, you know, they're wearing like, you know, Reebok Classics, and, you know, you're like, wow, you know, and their feet are in bits. So it's about the right shoe for you, and everyone's different with shoes, you know.
Yeah,
Shoes
because I went out and bought like Hoka, Speed, Hogs or whatever they're called, and some other ones. And they ruined my knees. Not saying they will do this to other people, obviously. So I keep with cheap ones, but it works for me. It probably won't work with other people as well, though.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when I did a Chester 100, I bought a pair of New Balance trainers. They cost me $39.99 from Sports Direct. Fact. And there's pictures out there, and people can see the trainers, and they'll go, "Wow, yeah, they are $39.99," and that's because they worked for me. And
yeah, that's what I wear. New Balance, like around about the 40 to like 60.
That's what I have.
Yeah, because it works.
And it works for me. You know, when the more technical you go on, then you are in the realms of having to have specialized shoes, because you need protection around your toes. You need protection on the tongue, in particular, to protect your metatarsal, your heels. You know, so you do need the right shoes in the mountains. There's no getting away from that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have different shoes for different parts of the southern up the way.
Yeah.
So I've got a pair of trail shoes that when they get wet, the water pretty much comes out of them very, very quickly. And they're New Balance, actually. The water just comes out of them. But then I've got my La Sportivas that are very more rugged, technical. Then I've got Hoka Speed Goats for a particular part. And then I've got road shoes for some parts. So knowing what shoe to wear, especially in 100, you're not going to wear the same shoe, not really.
Yeah.
So you look at the route, and you can go in detail and say, well, that's when I want that, and that's when I want that. And that's when your drop bags become important. But my advice to anybody that is thinking about an ultra race, embrace the atmosphere. The atmosphere will get you through it.
Yeah.
And don't go straight into 100. I've seen that before. You admire them, but
I went to do the lap, and it's quite a hard course. It's probably not the hardest, but I would say it's harder than the bit of Chester 100, obviously. My leg went stiff and I couldn't finish it. I got to like 80 miles. But I would say that was a harder course because it's Lake District, it's very hilly. And these guys came over, they did actually complete it. I'm so shocked. And they've never run in their life. They did 5K. And I was like, and you've decided to enter this. They did 5K. I can't believe they even finished it.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, that's the other thing. There's no shape or size.
Yeah.
That fits an ultramarathon, and I love that about it.
Yeah, because it does shock you, doesn't it? It's so different, and like you can't even judge a person by the cover because it's such a different environment. There's not a certain type of person.
There was one guy, he just done a Scottish, Kenny his name is, and he did a Scottish 100 this year, and he finished it. Last year he did the race across Scotland, and he got to 200 miles and he DNF'd. But and I've said this, his performance was the best by a country mile. He literally had the worst. He had football trainers on. He had these tracksuit bottoms that are all sort of quilted. I don't know what you want to call them, sweatpants.
Yeah.
He had a normal day sack that was massive. I don't know what he was carrying. And I looked at him and I thought, he's going to do that. And then he got to Lauder, and the guy was in bits, and he still managed to go and do 20 miles. And honestly, I hope he does it this year. I genuinely hope he does it, and I hope he completes it, because that guy has got something that is rarely seen. Yes, he might not have finished it, But for what he was trying to do with the equipment he had was unbelievable. And I honestly take my hat off to him. That was by far the best performance. I don't care who won, who didn't win, who got beat at times. Yeah, that's all great. But the guy, yeah, he didn't finish it. But for what he was trying to do it with and the equipment and everything else, just honestly, I'm actually quite in awe of the guy. And you know what? Wow. And so I'm so pleased he did the Scotland 100 and he finished it. And I know a lot of people that were at the race across Scotland last year and they saw him were ecstatic when he finished the 100 mile this year.
Yeah.
Because it was just like, wow, this guy, and he's tough. You know, if he could just get a little bit of help, and I wish I could. I would. It's just fantastic, and that's what I love about ultramarathon running. You can't just. And there was a guy doing the 50 mile this year, and he doing the 100 mile. He had a Scotland football shirt on, big lad, and he just pounded the miles out. He was just literally pounding the miles out, and you just look at and you're like, wow, you know, and that's what I loved about crewing. When I'm seeing people that, you know, were achieving things that I don't think they realised what they were achieving at the time. I think they'll look back and go, wow, we achieved.
Yeah, I think when I first DNF'd at Chester 100, for a year, I was literally like, I didn't finish, and I wasn't like disappointed. I was glad I did it, and I felt like I learned from the experience. And it was only when I was going back. Oh no, I did 70 miles, got to the 62 mile point because I didn't study the route enough. So I didn't know where I was going and I just got lost. And till literally before Chester, I was like, oh my God, you ran so far. And we do need to reflect on stuff we've done, because you can't just be like, oh, I failed, I didn't do it, I wasn't thinking. No, you did a lot, you got there, you entered, you tried your best.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things what can go wrong in an ultra, and just to cross that start line is such an achievement in itself.
Oh yeah, I mean, years ago I did a race. It was up Mount Kinlochblue. It was a part of the World's Sky Series, and basically everybody that towed a line and made a certain distance, I can't remember the distance, got a medal. They got a medal.
Yeah.
Just for, right. And I think it was like checkpoint 2. I can't remember what checkpoint. And the cut-offs are really steep. And you've got the best in the world doing it. And to finish in the cut-offs and come down, you get a beautiful certificate. Honestly, it's beautiful certificate to say that you've completed it. And that's what you get if you do it. And it was such a unique thing. And I always think, like, anybody that toes a line for an ultra marathon, there and then they get the respect. They get the respect, irrespective how good or not or fast or whatever. It's irrelevant, actually. They toe that line, they get the ultimate respect. And one thing I will say about GB Ultras, and you have to give them credit for this, is the first runner through a checkpoint gets the same as the last person.
Yeah, and it's very well supported.
That doesn't normally happen. In certain, I've done races in the past where they're packing it up. They're packing it up, and that's just not great. You know, it's not a good look. It's not right. Every runner should get the same, irrespective of wherever they are on the route. And to be fair, I would say GB Ultras are pretty cool at that.
Yeah,
I think that's important as well. Really important.
I think GB Ultras just got its own community about itself anyway, from the support and the people who enter. It's just such a good race.
I think the people that go to the races, they make it.
Yeah.
They make it. And it's nice to catch up with them. But I would say that, you know, in an ultra marathon, everyone should be treated the same, irrespective of standards. Standards are irrelevant. But the ultra world's growing. It's
Yeah,
ever
it's
so
getting bigger. It's
yeah.
like, if you're thinking about trying, go for it, because it's so different. I'm talking to like people
Yeah,
watching. Like, it's so different to doing a marathon. I feel like a marathon, it's all about time. Even though it's a long distance, it's quite about time in marathon for a lot of people. As when you're doing an ultra, no one, unless you go in for like get a
Yeah.
place, everyone's just like, it's a day out, talk to people, make friends. And like I made some amazing friends from GB Ultra.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. The ultra world, and that's why the ultra world should never ever go down that sort of road where they go, about time. I mean, go and do a track 100 or the Thames one where it's flat. People go there for a particular time because they can get the PB for 100 mile. I get that. But for all the other ultras, it's not really about time. It's about what is in the sense of what time that you want to give yourself, 24 hours and that's that. But not if you do 18 hours, 19 hours, it's irrelevant. It's meaningless, to be honest. And actually, there's only one time that matters in an ultramarathon, actually, and that's the cutoff time. That's the only time that matters in an ultramarathon is the cutoff times. That's all it is.
Yeah. Right. So another question I've written down. If you have put a question in the comment, can you re-comment it? Because we will ask you in a minute. But there's a lot more comments than I'm expecting, so I don't want to miss one. But I will look through them all. But if I don't see it, I'm sorry about that. How do you cope with the pain cave? You've kind of answered this anyway. Like, so
the pain cave, there's two ways you can do it. For me personally, it's something I've learned really recently. I've done my commando course on P Company where I was in pain and you get through it, but you're in a team environment there. So you don't want to let your friends down. And so that sort of, it's different mentality. It's a different mental attitude. So when it's individual, which ultramarathon can be, for me, it's like, right, okay, I'm hurting, but I know that it will go because it always does. Now you may get another pain that might override that pain. So that pain you don't even feel. And it sort of goes around that body. And the way I do it is go, and I know this is going to sound really, it's going to sound madness. I know it is. When my shins went, as I said before, it was like, okay, cool. I got further with my ankle thingies than that before. Oh, I'm really pleased with that. Because I've got another 50 miles on that right leg before. That's fantastic. And the pain that it's your brain telling you you're in pain. It's your brain. So it's flipping your brain from a negative to a positive. So you've got to remember why you're doing it. What your motivation for doing whatever it is your motivation bigger than what you're doing? So if it's your first 50 miler and you're dehydrated, well, don't worry about that. You can get fluid down yourself and then you'll come back. If you're not eating, you can do that. Just walk and eat. Just can walk and eat and you can go that. If you've got blisters or toenails have come off, to be honest with you, I've got hardly any toenails if I've got any left anyway. Right, so that's just a fact. We will all have pain. And it's, for me, the way I embrace it is I say to myself, okay, that's good. That part of the body is working. When you can't feel pain, you've got a problem. Yeah. That means your body's down, you're going numb. As it happened when I finished it towards the end of the ultramarathon, the 440 miler, when I was right at the end, and it was only the last 5 miles where everything started to fall apart. And that was because in my brain, it said, we've done it.
Yeah, it's all over now.
It's all over now. It's done.
Yeah, so that last 5 miles is like so different to the rest of it.
So everything was gone.
The last question, I'm going to nip off for a second. So you just answer the question and then I'll be back in a minute. Is how do you come up with a strategy for a race? I will be back in a second, but just get talking and then I'll be back.
Yeah. That's a good question. Firstly, I look at the race. So what is a race? Is it hilly? Is it a lot of tarmac? Do I need to know a bit? Is it hard to navigate? Where am I going to be if it's going through the night? Where I'm going to be? So I sit down and work all that out, and then I work out my predicted time at different checkpoints. Then what I do from that is I work out in X amount of time, I'm going to burn X amount of calories. So I would have worked out what food I'm going to have, generally speaking, but that can change because you might not fancy something like that. And then I'll work out, right, okay, the cut-offs are 3 hours from that or whatever. And I'll sit there and go, right, okay, we've got 3 hours to make that cut off. Right, I think we can do it in 2. So we know we're an hour ahead. So but then I don't go, oh, right, then we've got an extra hour for that cut off. I'll use that time in between, if that makes any sense. And then from there, I keep that doing. So the race strategy depends on the race itself. And it never involves other runners. So like the race across Scotland this year, I'm not looking at the field going, oh, he's this, he's that, and she's this and she's that. I will run at my own pace at a time that I've worked out and calculated for myself. And that can change because the weather can change it quite instantly. If the weather gets horrendous, that time goes and you've got to accept it. But my training program comes out of what my race strategy. So, for example, if I was going to do a very hilly race, my 30 miler will be a hilly 30 miler. And I'll do a few more hiking hills and so forth. If it's not, it's like Chester or whatever, then it's more about just getting out of the tarmac and road and running, really. That's basically what it is. But race strategy, it's all about excluding anybody else. It's about what you do in the time that you want to do it. And the race will change. You will start with a particular strategy, but your strategy will 100% change. And that could, as I said before, could be the weather. It could be not feeling great. It could be that you're dehydrated at a particular part. And it's how you adjust to that, really. And you will have problems. You've got to solve them as you go along. But that's the beauty of ultramarathon running. Every one of us will have a problem. So race strategies, you can have the best strategy in the world, but it will change as you're doing it. That is certain. That's going to happen. But you've got to look at the route in detail and know where you can run and where you can't run. And if you can't run because it's really hilly and there's a lot of stone, don't try. Save that energy for where you can on the road. There's no point killing yourself up a hill and then get into a nice flat bit and you can't run the flat bit because you've killed yourself on the hill. Pointless. So run those sections, but no, that's when you've got to really know the route. You can Google Earth it, you've got the profile. You can have it all written down in a little notepad as you're going along. But the race strategy comes really from within. But you can't have too much of a strategy. You can't overthink it. You just can't, especially on a 100 miler. 50 mile, even a 50 miler, you can't really, because all you've got to do is look at some of the Chesters years ago when they were complete rain, mud. It runs completely different when it's hard. So the strategy is about as you're going along, adjusting to it. And the 100 mile definitely is that way. Because it was quite hot this year in the Chester 100, for example. So I'd advise
as well, because I've done this year and the one you did the year before. This year there wasn't a lot of cows at all, because I've got a mega fear of cows from the first time. As the first year, there was just like cows in your way, and you was trying to find your way around them. Like it was so different, even like it was similar weather, to be honest, just because the inconvenience. Yeah,
I mean that's what I'm saying. Your race strategy on the day, you have your plan, and mine would say, like for Race Across Scotland, I've said I want to do a particular time in my head. So out of that, I'll work out rough windows for my checkpoints, and one of the windows is, I think it's a 2.5 hour difference. We're in that window. If I'm in that window somewhere, I'm quite happy. I'm not bothered about it. And it's more about not going too fast too soon as well, really. And I think that's the key on ultras. It's not getting sucked into doing it, starting off really quick. You don't mean, unless this next bit is particularly hilly and you can't run, then fair enough. Okay, I can understand that. But not to get sucked into a race at the beginning.
You can't really, in an ultra, start off too slow. Like, because if you start off too fast, you're wasting energy. Even if you're walking for the first, as long as you're making them checkpoints, you're reserving your energy for later on in the race to a point.
It is, yeah. And it depends on the route, as I said. It really depends on the route. So, like, like one of the races, they start at the bottom of a hill, and then you see people run up this. It's about 1.5 mile long hill, and they're sprinting up it, and you're like, really? What are you doing? Just walk up it. And then you see them about 2 hours down the road, and you pass them, and they're struggling. And it's having a good game plan, strategy, but your strategy's on the day, because you don't know what the weather's going to be like. You don't know what the path's like. It might have been dry 2 weeks before, and then you get there and it's absolutely drenched. So you can't give yourself. You just got to run the conditions and run to whatever rhythm you've got in your head, and that's really it. Really, it really is that simple. But recceing the route is a must.
Yeah, like when I did that first 100, I did it even. I was like, I'll just train and it'd be fine, but it's just not. You need to. I don't drive, so I don't wreck the route. But I was literally on Google Earth, and it got to the point where people was like, "Do you know where you're going?" And I could like list off places, and everyone was like, and I was like, yeah, because the first time I did Chester, I ran past the checkpoint because I didn't know where it was. So it wasn't when I DNF'd, it wasn't that I didn't make it to the checkpoint as such. It was that I went further than it, and then I didn't make it to the checkpoint because I just went a couple of miles after it, as I probably would have still been in the race if I knew where I was going and I did research the checkpoints and wreck the race.
I mean, the Chester 100, for example, I'd recceed 3 parts of it, and I had recceed it, so I knew the key parts. But it's recceing. It's as much as you can do is recce it, and and equally run it in a way that you're comfortable, especially at the beginning, not too hard.
Yeah. Another question I'm going to ask: is there any equipment what you would recommend to people? Like,
yeah. I mean, equipment is. I mean, ultra world. You know yourself.
You can find something in the ultra world to do anything, but is there just like anything you would recommend? Like,
for me, I use squirrel nut butter instead of Vaseline.
Yeah,
I use Vaseline in all the arms and all that, but on my feet I use squirrel nut butter. It's very hard, but then you obviously make it soft, and I put 2 layers on my feet, and obviously I've chipped all my toenails. And then I wear the Injinji Super Crew socks with the toes, and I tend to do all right with that, to be honest. So because your feet are so important, your feet are so important for obvious reasons. The other thing I tend to do is for equipment, obviously knowing where your kit is on your body, so you don't get your mandatory kit and just shove it in. You have to know where, for example, your torch is, and your torch is charged. You know what setting you've got it on, unless you've got 3 settings. You know, for example, where your phone is in case of emergency. Your food, so it's all, like my left pocket, normally I'll have a phone, but in front of my phone I'll have a waffle bar. So if I'm on waffle, I'm not going, oh, where is it? Let me get my pack off. It's there. I can still walk and take it and eat it.
Yeah.
So the equipment is having the vest that suits you. There's so many different run vests out there that realistically, I mean, the running vests themselves, the bottle systems aren't the greatest because they're soft and it's great, but getting them back in sometimes can be a pain. Taking them out can be a pain. So the equipment is quite personal. What suits you and what works for you, everyone's different. But for me, the big one is your feet, and Vaseline definitely, or your bits, or where your skin can rub. School nut butter my feet. In Gigi's Super Crew socks, 100% I'll be wearing them. I wear mainly Hockers, but not always. As I said, depending on what terrain I'm on is what I'll have. I do wear New Balance. I do wear La Sportivas for more rugged terrain. Your waterproof jacket is so important that you get the right waterproof jacket. It's got to be good. Because when you're in the mountains, it doesn't matter what you look like. It's irrelevant what you look like.
Yeah.
You're either warm or you're cold. And I think that's the key, is having the right waterproof jacket. Is so your head torch is so important. Your hands, your gloves, because the moment your hands get cold and you can't operate and you can't do your clips and you can't do your head torch or your phone, the moment you lose your hands, you're in a problem. You've got a problem there. So having the right gloves is a definite. And it's trying the kit out. Try the kit out. Don't try it out running around the streets of wherever you live. Go out hiking one day, and if it's raining, you know what? I'm going to go put that waterproof jacket on. I'm going to go and try my gloves, and let's just see what they're like when they're wet. Let's see how they react. Because certain gloves, obviously, even if they get wet, they're warm. My Montaigne gloves, especially in the sort of autumn, spring, summer, they're fantastic because they've got even if they get wet, they don't take the water in, but the water reacts to give it still warmth. It's just little things like that, really, with equipment. Having your long tights for nighttime. Have you ran in them? Have you tested them out if they get wet? So because of rubbing and everything else. But equipment, the equipment in the ultra world now has gone crazy. You can get every type of a bit of equipment you can. I personally don't use poles. It's something that I don't do. Just never found the need. I know people that do, but it's having the right poles. I've seen people run down hills and they've got the wrong size poles, and you can tell they've got the wrong. So it's having the right equipment.
Sorry, I'm butting in. With poles, you can't just take them on the day and expect them to work. There's a whole technique just behind them, so you need to practice that on its own.
Yeah, absolutely. The only other bit of equipment that I would say to people is, if you can, definitely the nighttime, have a nice warm layer. And if you can get it, it's got a bit of reflection on it, just in case something does go wrong. That would always help. But definitely have a warm layer. Again, I've got a long Montaigne dark top, perfect. Put it on, it's warm, and it maintains the heat as well. It's having, keeping yourself warm is a key, and saving yourself £10 here, £5 there. That's okay for certain ultras, but if you're going to go in the mountains and the hills, your waterproof jacket is your lifeline. It really is. Yeah. There is just no shortcuts there where that is concerned. Sadly, there just isn't. Because the last couple of times they've been up in Scotland, I think Wales last year as well, and this week it's gone. The rain came. You've got to be warm with equipment, and if you've got a navigational system, be it off your phone, be it off a GPX, test it. Know what you're doing with it. There's no point having a navigational system if you don't know, if you've not tested it. because a GPX might take you through a housing estate with a straight line. So you got to realise, oh, okay, that means going around there then. You know,
Yeah,
or
that's happened to me, where I told me to go through. Well, I went into someone's back garden and they really didn't appreciate this at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And trying to explain that I was running a race was just not working. As if I wrecked the route, I would have obviously known I can't, like, they're not going to have me swimming through like the River Thames. So I would have known to go straight on. So obviously check like your GPS and make sure your GPS is right.
And you know, it's great having these systems. I mean, I have the Fenix 6X, but I know that, okay, you know, there was bits where the GPX would say go here. No, you're on a perfectly good path. There is no path there. I'm staying on this path, and then it joins back on. So yeah, it's knowing the systems that you got, whatever works, phone or whatever. So that's really it with the equipment, really. Yeah, that's it with the equipment, I would say.
So I've got a couple of questions here. If I feel like we've answered it, I'm obviously going to skip because you probably heard it be answered. Feet. What? If in any of your races, what do you feel like you would have done different, and what did you do?
Oh yeah, every race, every single race, no matter if you've won it, DNF'd, course record or whatever, you should always go back and reflect. Should always go back and reflect, because there was always something that you've got wrong. It could be in the training phase. It could be you were eating something. Like when I won the Chester, I reflected literally the next day, because I ate nothing for that whole race. All I had was tailwind. I didn't eat anything.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't eat anything. Now, what people won't know is for about a week after that, I couldn't eat at all. Or could hardly eat. I was eating ice cream and yogurt for 2 days, 2 to 3 days. That's about the only thing I could stomach. And then, so anyway, milkshakes. But basically, I thought I've got to, learn to eat really, and I've got to. So that even though I'd won and whatever, I knew I had to. There was something I could improve on. There's always something you can improve on. It might be something that a bit of your equipment or your trainers or your socks, or you go, you know what, they weren't that great, they're okay, but so you can always reflect and change. Every race I've ever done in my life, you can learn from it, irrespective if you set a course record, you win, as I said before. You're constantly learning, and you just don't, you learn new things, and so you sort of don't ever think, all right, I've got everything sussed, because you haven't. So yeah, my thing to everyone is always reflect.
Yeah, I'm just looking if there's any more questions. How long would you say you prepare for a 100 miler or a big challenge? Like, what's your max period?
A 100 miler, I think you need, if you've got a base level of running, and I mean by doing 40 miles a week, 30 to 40 miles a week, give yourself about 5 months, depending on what the 100 miler is. So if it was not that technical mountains or whatever, 5 months is fine, it's plenty of time. And then you'd go into, right, you know what, I'm going to go and walk the route as much as I can do. And when I say walk it. You don't need to go and run it. Walk it so you can recce it. And you know where the checkpoints are, get familiarise yourself with it. And then just go and do some training over the route. It will always help. But 5 months, I wouldn't say any more time than that, really. But actual specific training for it, you're only talking 20 weeks, really. You know, yeah, about 20 weeks. I wouldn't do any more than 20 weeks, really.
Yeah. So someone asked here, I'm going to butcher this name. Bertie has asked, are you going to write a book?
Well, someone actually asked me that last week. Mainly about
I'd read it.
about my school life, about how autism, obviously, because it wasn't recognised, how that affected me in my school life. Was sort of like the sort of premise. My running, my army career, the places I went, the reflecting I've done on some of the operations we did, and the ones I thought were worth doing, worthwhile. Like for example, Rwanda after genocide, 100% that was worth going there with the United Nations. So and then obviously running and so forth. So someone mentioned to me last week actually, and I hadn't really thought about it until last week, and then it's something I sort of in my head. I'm thinking, you know what, it could be worth, because my life. Finding out I was autistic last year, it was the most surreal moment, really, to be honest, because I could reflect on certain things that happened in my life where I said something to some people and they got quite upset, and I was thinking I was just give that person a compliment. What are they getting upset for?
I get that.
And I have to say, looking back, and reflecting, has been really, really good, very empowering. And I owe so much. I owe a lot to certainly one particular person. It's actually, I can't, you know what, she has changed my life. There's no two ways about it. I can't lie, in such a positive way. But yeah, I think, it's something. Yeah, the answer is it'd be something that I would definitely be keen on. But I hadn't thought about it because someone literally mentioned to me last week, an ex-old army buddy of mine. We just talk about something completely separate, and he just said, "Look, why don't you write a book?" He says, "You've gone from this to this institution." Because when I was a kid, I went to a boarding school because my dad was in the army and the troubles and everything else. And anyway, it was a Catholic boarding school, and I was a Protestant, so I was on the back foot straight away, really. And so but although there was good things, but there's also bad things. So that in itself is quite an interesting start to a book, and how autism wasn't recognised. The nuns didn't know what autism was. They just thought I was a child that was just misbehaving half the time. And so, as I said to you before, running was my escape. And when I say the word escape, it really was an escape in a lot of respects. I look back, it was my saviour in a lot of ways. Less so in the army, I have to say, but in the army it still was. But yeah, I do. So I do sort of think it's feasible. It's definitely feasible.
And the only other question, unless someone wants to pop one in quickly, is what we've not answered. What I've seen is, do you train at night?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Most of the time. I mean, I haven't done it recently, but I normally get out. I normally run around, and this is my autism, I suppose. 3:28 in the morning. I leave my house and I go running, and I normally do a 10-mile in the mornings. I haven't done it because obviously I did do it before my long run. So the answer is yes. I love running at the night. It's just the best. And my advice to anybody that's going to go and do a run for the night, try and do it before the sun comes up. It's magical.
Do you wake up at that time every night, like in general?
No, I mean, at the moment, I'm waking up around about 4:30, but I'm not going out of the house until about 5:30.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a bit of stretching. I'm doing a bit of core exercise actually in the mornings now before I go out in the mornings. And then I'm just going out and doing about just over 5 in the mornings because I want to be healthy for the race across Scotland because I can't, once I've done the 100-mile effort in the Race Across Scotland and I sort of turn the tap off, I'm obviously it's all about the 100-miler in October, so I've got to carry on training in September. So it's sort of, that's when I want to hit the hard miles, basically.
Right, I think that's it for all the questions. Have you got anything you want to add to it?
Thank you for having
What?
Thank you for having me, Andy.
Thank you so much for
No, my pleasure.
thinking about coming on this channel. Have you got any social media, like obviously your charity link, what I will pop in the description, and it will be pinned as the top comment if anyone wants to donate.
My Autistic Runner Facebook page, Andy, would be appreciated.
Yeah,
and
I'll pop that there as well.
My Instagram, and you know, if anyone's got any other questions, they can just message me direct. Not a problem.
Yeah. Okay. I probably will come through the comments and reply to a couple of people. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I do want to do more of these. I want to do them like once a month. So if you've got any people you think who would be willing to do or you would like to see, please message me or comment it. I would actually was thinking about doing like how to be inclusive with disabilities, autism, physical disabilities, to help people to understand how to include people, because I'm assuming for someone who is never experienced a bit, it would be quite hard. So I was going to do a live on that. So if you would be up for that, comment that down below, because I have got some guests in my head. So, and I guess that's it. So have you got anything left to say?
No, Andy, and thank you for having us, mate. Take care.
You're welcome. I'll just take us off live now, and
stay safe.
Stay safe, and I see